Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel. I am joined by my co-host, who is probably going to lose his PLF screen sooner than he'd want to, Tanner Dykstra. And today we are here to talk about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Tanner, I think maybe your most anticipated movie this year, and we have now finally seen it. You are going to be seeing it twice more this week. Oh, whoa, he did magic. It's like the guys in this movie. But if you want to talk to us about Mission Impossible or any of the other Mission Impossible movies, which we have actually just rewatched, you can join our Discord. That link is in the description. And while you're down there, also leave a comment letting me know if this is your favorite Mission Impossible movie, and if not, which one it is. And also subscribe to the channel and ring that bell because we do movie reviews basically every week. We skipped Insidious last week. I'm okay with that, folks. But we're back. We can't miss our chance to talk about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 on the day that we saw it. Tanner, you were very excited for this movie. Maybe scarily so. How does Dead Reckoning Part 1 fall in your pantheon of excitement?
Tucker, it does not fall out of my pantheon of excitement. Because...
That was the last movie.
Yeah, that was the last movie. I love Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Tucker. I thought this was a great film. It did, I had high expectations. I just thought, oh god, is this movie going to top my personal Mission Impossible ranking? It didn't, but I still loved it nonetheless. I think as a film, Dead Reckoning Part 1 contains multitudes. It opens on a note where I'm like, okay, this is an interesting opening for a modern Mission Impossible movie. The opening and notes throughout the film are a bit more quiet, but more contemplative. It's not as like drummy and kinetic and we're not going all out from the opening. We do get that. We get plenty of that.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
Of course.
But we sort of oscillate between these two moods in a Mission Impossible movie, unlike we've done in maybe like a Fallout or a Rogue Nation.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting for me. Tucker, I plan to see this film 2 more times this week. So maybe it'll click with me a bit better. But until then, I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it. I just found it to be, maybe not quite what I expected from Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. And, but don't get me wrong, again, I love this film, and it still contains a lot of the stuff I love about the modern Mission Impossible franchise.
Yeah, it's also a movie that I really like. I had not seen any Mission Impossible movies until the last week, in which we watched all 6 of the other movies leading up to Dead Reckoning, and I'm glad that I did because I think that watching this movie and certain moments of character development and payoff and relationship are definitely a lot better felt if you know what the characters have gone through leading up to this film. And from the stunts and the cinematography and the ensemble cast, this film is going at all of its gas. It's going full pedal. But I think it does falter in a few areas that make me hesitant to consider it one of my favorites in this series. Primarily, I think that editing wise and writing wise, it's kind of shaky. And I don't know if that's because, like you were saying, I had different expectations going in and it just kind of is its own thing. But it's a great action movie, but I think that when it comes to its writing and the plot and the dialogue sometimes between characters, I'm like, I think it needed more passes, to be 100% honest.
Here's what I'll say, because let's start on the dialogue point and the editing point, because Tucker, I was feeling that a little bit. I don't know if I hold it against the movie as much, but I do recognize a bit of that unease, a bit of that trepidation when it comes to those aspects of the film. Because I want to talk about the dial-up, because something that we brought up with a number of the Mission Impossible films that we watched over the weekend, really, was that sometimes in some of the movies, the plot can get a little bit muddled, let's say. It can get a little bit messy. It can be a little bit who's working for who and who said the thing to that and where's the thing and what are they doing now. This movie, I think they try to circumvent a lot of that.
They do.
They try to circumvent it.
They have to try hard because it's necessary. Because this might be one of the more complex plot-wise movies with tons of different groups and people around other corners and who's trusting who. And I haven't seen these guys in 20 minutes. What are they up to? And what do they know? And what does he know? What do they do? How have they met? It is very complicated. And I think that you're right in the dialogue. They pretty consistently have to pump the brakes and be like, this is what we're thinking, and this is what's
Yes.
happening
Yes.
right now, and let's go over the point of what the goober is and what the stakes are and
Uh-huh.
whatever his relationship is. They do that a couple times throughout the movie, and I think that does hurt the pacing and contribute to it being not a movie that I felt was necessarily overly long. I think it justified its runtime. I wasn't
Yeah,
like, oh
absolutely.
God, boy, we've been in forever. But a longer movie than it needed to be because they
Sure.
need to keep stopping and rewinding a little bit and be like, guys, we know it's crazy, but here, let's explain it again.
Yeah. And for people who I don't know for some reason are trepidatious, I'm gonna use that word again about seeing the film. And should we talk about the plot a little bit here,
Yeah,
Tucker?
yeah,
there's like a spoiler in this movie, I
yeah.
think, but
There are a couple,
we can
which we'll talk at the end.
we'll chat around that. So basically, the enemy is AI, very
Yes,
pertinent for this film. I think that it really endears itself to me from that point for being like,
sure,
hey,
because you hate AI.
I hate AI
Yeah,
and like just a very like modern prescient point to take in this Mission Impossible film.
yeah.
It is known as the Entity. They say the
Hmm.
Entity a lot.
A lot.
Um and basically it's a super AI and it's like it can rewrite
Truth.
whoever controls the entity controls the truth of the world, and there's going to be a war and the person with the truth and the information will win the war and the person with the
Yeah,
entity. But the entity, Tucker, it's gone sentient. The
yeah,
entity itself has gone rogue, if
yeah.
you will. And that's what we need to stop. We need to shut down Ethan Hunt, and the impossible mission force wants to shut down the entity. But
Yeah.
all the other governments and all the evil organizations, they want to control it and
Hmm.
use it to control the world.
Yeah. And the thing about this plot is I actually like it conceptually.
Yeah,
I think that the idea of having this crazy superpower and needing to go more analog with the way that people are communicating because the entity can hack every single system, and it introduces an interesting element of trust and mistrust as it's live editing the software that they're working with
hmm,
and mistranslating voices to team members. I actually really like all of those aspects, but I think it gets so backgrounded by the second half that where it doesn't even really matter. Like we lose that sort of digital versus analog mistrust element. And it's also, I think, weighed down by one of my least favorite villains in the Mission
oh,
Impossible
okay.
franchise in
Don't care for
Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Not only
Okay,
do I think the actor is not selling how intimidating Ethan Hunt thinks he is,
sure, fair.
and his dialogue is so on the nose crazy villain campiness that I didn't find him particularly intimidating. It was really just because everyone was like, "Oh God, he's bad news." That I'm like, I know this guy is bad news, rather than the performance or even his actions. Like he's not even doing like, yeah, he's nothing compared to Philip Seymour Hoffman in any way. But Philip
True.
Seymour Hoffman and even some of the other villains in the other movies, like even Henry Cavill, have a intimidating presence in their scenes, and I really just don't think Gabriel had that. And even the element that is supposed to give him the most villainous weight, this dynamic that he has with Ethan from the past, is pretty interesting, but they don't play into it enough to make me feel like it's a substantial part of his character. And
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing because we do open this on a flashback, and I presume this is something that'll be fleshed out in Dead Reckoning Part 2,
yeah,
wherein Gabriel is intrinsically tied to Ethan Hunt from his pre-IMF days.
yeah.
I think
Something that
Ethan
we
Hunt,
don't know anything about up to this
exactly,
point. We've never
yeah.
seen it.
I believe Ethan says literally, he made me into the man that I am today.
Yes.
And I was expecting some fleshing out of that plot
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
of that backstory in this film. We didn't get it. So I presume we'll be getting it in Dead Reckoning Part
Probably.
2 when, we finally have our final confrontation between Ethan and Gabriel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I felt it was something missing. To that point though, Tucker, I can agree with what you're saying, really. Like, they're really building him up as this, like, guy to be afraid of. He's the antithesis to Ethan Hunt. He's a ghost. He's got the entity on his side.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I thought he was solid. Like, I didn't think he was
Yeah.
bad by any stretch of the imagination. But honestly, I would take Philip Seymour Hoffman over him any day of the
Yeah, of
week.
course, of
Obviously,
course.
I might even take Solomon Lane over him.
Sure. Oh, I
Let's
would
say on the
absolutely agree with that.
weekdays. On the weekdays, I'll take Solomon Lane over him.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think the problem for me comes down to it's a lot of tell, don't show when it
yeah,
comes to our main villain here. And also that is true about the entity as well. It's a lot of people talking about the dangers of the entity, the potential danger of the entity. And oh my god, Gabriel is a really scary guy, and you got to be scared of him. But then like he puts a knife in a guy's hand and like shoots some people and knocks down a door and like says some
Yeah,
mean things and fights a person that we care about. But like otherwise, he's kind of just a guy, and that really took me out of a lot of the weight of the movie. But where I think Gabriel is lacking, I think we that is made up for balance wise in our core cast of characters, the characters that Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie have worked to create to make the core main IMF group in all of their movies, including Benji and Luther and Ilsa and Ethan Hunt, and now also
Grace.
Grace. Yeah, her name's probably not actually Grace, so I was like trying to like rewrite
Yeah,
it in
yeah,
my
yeah.
head. Which I think are done pretty well here, solidly well. I think that could have been more emotional stakes and involvement of some of these side characters, but when they're on screen and doing their stuff together and working together, especially in that airport sequence, it's top notch Mission Impossible
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean this dynamic is kind of like set in stone now, and it just works. These actors are just clicking along.
Yep.
They've been doing this. Luther Ving Rhames has been doing
Yeah.
this with Tom Cruise since 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Benji's been there since 2006,
Mm-hmm.
and these guys just work together. And as you said, Tucker, you feel it in that airport scene at the beginning when we have to split up, and Luther and Benji are like working on something and they don't want to tell Ethan,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Ethan's like, "Guys,
Yeah.
what's going on? Tell me about
That
this."
might be the best scene in the movie,
Yeah, I don't know.
or at least my favorite.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I mean, that you also have some emotional stuff. You have a moment like with between Benji and Ethan where he kind of like
Yeah.
blows up at him again, as he does in a classic scene from Rogue Nation, where he's like, "Ethan, stop fucking around, level with me. You don't have to save everyone. Chill the f out, bud."
Mm-hmm.
And then
Thanks
Ving
for not
Rhames.
cussing. You never do that
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I know. We try not to do that here. Ving Rhames, Luther has a similar scene right
Yeah.
before the final action sequence where he's like, "Listen, Ethan, here's your options. You got to think about this. You got to
Mm.
be careful." And we're doing some Solomon Lane stuff here again with the entity, where it's like, so if we're are we doing the thing that it wants us to do, or should
Yeah.
we be doing
God.
the thing that it wants us to do, or should we be doing the
Yeah.
opposite, or does it want us to do the opposite?
Though
I
also,
think that's just like the paranoia you have to have
yeah.
in like a modern spy action franchise
Sure.
of this ilk. You just kind of have to have that like self doubt of like, are we outsmarting them or are they outsmarting us? Who's outsmarting who? But
Yeah.
anyway, circling back to core characters, Ilsa again, fantastic. I love the
Yeah.
addition of Rebecca Ferguson in these later films. And the relationship between her and Ethan is really is a good exploration to be had in this
Yeah.
film. I
Yeah.
mean, you get that classic opening of just her just being a badass sniper in the desert with an eye
So cool.
patch.
It's so
So
cool.
cool.
Another great
And
scene.
should we talk about Grace in a moment? Because she is a larger
Yes.
presence in the film than maybe
Yeah.
the rest of those characters.
Well, yeah. And I find that very interesting. Because I think her involvement is maybe one of my favorite parts of this movie,
Hmm.
because I think she works very well as the rookie character and
Yeah.
as the mysterious force that's kind of throwing a cog in Ethan Hunt's plans. And he's had plenty of cogs thrown in his plans before, but never one that was like fighting against him.
Yeah.
And so I think that the energy that Haley Atwell brings and the confusion and the not being used to things, and then being integrated into the IMF team and trying to learn what's going on. I think that she brings a very fresh flavor to this movie. I think that her the amount of presence she has in this movie sometimes comes at the cost of giving us more Luther or Benji or Ilsa.
Yep. Yep.
And which I think is a little unfortunate, because I do think that they are the better characters.
Yep.
But when she's on screen and when she's having her dynamic with Ethan Hunt and Tom Cruise, both those guys, I think they have great chemistry. She lends a comedic edge to the movie that I wasn't expecting. That I want to get into a bit, but she's a giant part of the story, and
Yeah.
that was not indicated almost at all in the trailers.
Yeah. Okay.
And I knew something was off, quote unquote, when she was
Hmm.
second build. I was like, really?
Okay.
Huh? And then she was. She absolutely she was.
So yeah, because she's introduced as this like self-enterprising thief character,
Yeah.
who is a wrench thrown into the whole machinery in this airport scene, and then she's along for the rest of the ride. And as a character, she serves as sort of much like a Phoebe Waller-Bridge in Dial of Destiny, sort of a
Surprisingly similar.
regressed action hero.
Yeah, yeah.
She is a character who is out for herself. She hasn't learned the lessons that Ethan Hunt has learned about, looking out for others and putting others before yourself. This film is really about like these dueling themes of like selflessness versus selfishness,
Yeah, absolutely is.
and Ethan Hunt as the paragon of good and selflessness and
Hmm,
putting others
hmm.
before yourself, and yeah, I will always protect your life before mine. Things of
Yeah,
that, things like that. And she's good in that, and she has this character arc over the course of the film where she's like, oh, I can trust people.
yeah.
Um, and to that end, we don't have to get into this a whole lot, but I see what you're doing, Tom Cruise. You're
Yeah.
getting up there in
Not
years. We
sneaky.
all know you're not sneaky, okay? You're putting Haley Atwell second build. You're putting her throughout the movie. You're making her, it's pretty clear that she's not good at a lot of these things, but there's room to learn. Oh boy,
Hmm.
is there room to learn. Maybe in some future Mission Impossible movies where we begin to hand the baton off a little bit. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe Ethan Hunt's still there. He's there as a mentor, and he still gets to do his sweet old man kick-ass stuff, but we're maybe shuffling the billing order here a little bit in
Yeah.
these movies, and maybe exploring the Haley Atwell character background, because she's got a mysterious background as a thief, and what happened to her, and why is she a thief? You're not
Not
sneaky.
only not only she is a thief, she's also in everything else. When she first
Yes,
shows up
yes.
on screen, it's like, brrr, brrr, and I'm like, damn, this is a lot. But then I realized it was cycling through. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not
Yeah,
actually that
yeah.
much, but it's still a lot.
It
What do you,
does it does smell of like we're setting her up to be potentially a spin-off or mainline character. I don't know if that would work.
it's
That's a separate
actually
conversation,
it's
really.
actually a lot like Fury 7, in which there's the sequence that's very, we're setting up for Hobbs and Shaw,
Oh,
and we're
yeah.
planting the seeds that this is going to be something bigger.
Yeah.
But I think that it works pretty well when she's on screen, and as I said, I think she offers a goofy edge because she's new to this, and she's basically the first person in the entire series that doesn't understand or isn't used to all the shenanigans
Yeah, yeah.
of doing crazy stunts and going into these insanely packed mansions full with people are on their comms and looking up on the window. Oh, it's over there.
Uh-huh.
And I like the goofiness. There is
Yeah.
a lot of like slapstick
Oh
in this
yeah.
movie, and moments where they pause and for the audience to have a laugh, and that's an edge that I don't really remember in the previous movies. But I think that those are some of my favorite moments of this movie, adding a comedic touch to it, and sometimes just stopping the action for a little bit of a gag. I'm like, I like this.
Yeah.
And I think that it gives Ethan Hunt a little more like sparkle in his eye. Like
Sure.
he's been around the block. He knows what he's fucking doing. And when something doesn't go quite right, he's like, that's a little weird. But
Yeah.
there's like he's a little bit funnier in that regard.
Yeah, I think the action slapstick has been something that's been present in a lot of the Mission Impossible
Okay.
movies. But this one it's a bit of a different flavor. It's a
Mm.
lot more of like something goes wrong and Ethan Hunt is like, "Oh, damn it, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out," or something weird happens and he's like, "All right." Namely, and then one of my favorite, most cartoony bits of the whole film is when they're doing a tumble down a stairs in a little tiny yellow car, and then him and Haley Atwell end up like swapping places, and they get out of the handcuffs that they were in, and they just kind of look at each other for a beat, and they're like, and they drive off.
Yeah. They
Um,
don't drive off. They
well,
do
they know
donuts in the fucking parking lot for like
because
20 minutes.
Haley Atwell, and I mentioned this, Haley Atwell is like not good at stuff, which
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
which is a good just comedic presence to have in these action sequences
yeah.
for sure.
And
Um,
it's the action sequences that this movie sells itself on. There are
Absolutely.
very few, but it's because they are very long.
Yeah.
And I think that the complexity of them and the length of them is both the movie's biggest strength and biggest weakness. I think that in terms of them feeling like there's a lot of momentum and a lot of moving pieces and elements to each that I wasn't expecting to happen, this movie keeps one-upping itself and keeps
Hmm.
taking it to the next level. And I really did appreciate how large scale and complex these action sequences were. But I think it also comes down to the thing that I was criticizing this movie of at the beginning, which was that writing, and sometimes and combined with the editing, there being people in different places and lots of groups and haven't seen these people in a while and what's happening here and who trusts
Hmm.
who, and it can get a little bit muddled when we're in a 35-minute action sequence and we've got six parties to worry about. But it's a balance. It ultimately does work. By the end of the movie, I'm like, okay, I can kind of compartmentalize and be like, these are the ones to care about in this moment. I don't need to really worry about anyone else, and then
Mhm.
swap focus halfway through. But they still have a lot of energy and are cool spectacle, lots of physical stunts. Believe it or not, Mission Impossible, well done action movie.
If you can believe it. Yeah, they're fucking great. You got the chase in Rome. You
I love that.
have you have what's interesting is the last three, I would say, because remind me, there's the chase in Rome, there's the chase in Venice, and then there's the train, the extended train sequence. That's
Yeah.
the three
Well,
in sequence,
uh,
right?
I would also say the Abu Dhabi airport thing.
Oh yeah, well
So
that's
then there are
first. That's
four.
first.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Though.
But so I was doing the like the last three in sequence.
Yeah.
Are really interesting because they are you have the Rome and the Rome chase and the train thing are sort of goofy bookends to the middle like moody chapter of the
Yeah.
action
Yeah.
sequences. Much more dramatic, much more filmically and writing wise, it's much more dramatic. Because it is like all done in darkness. There's lots of
Mm.
like smoky, narrow alleyways that Tom
Yeah.
Cruise
Yeah.
has to sprint through or fight Palm Clementif in. She's
Hmm.
great in this film, by the
She
way.
is.
Has like 6 lines,
Maybe that.
but is just like a mad, crazed dog that is just
Hmm.
like hell bent on killing Ethan Hunt. Great stuff. But yeah, I really love that juxtaposition that we get a fun one, we get a serious one, and then we're back to the fun stuff.
Mm.
And we do get that serious one because Tucker, should we do spoilers here?
Yeah, let's do spoilers.
Okay, spoiler talk for the one big spoiler of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part One. You have been warned. Ilsa dies,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, it got me. Frankly, I've come to really love her character, love
Mm.
Rebecca Ferguson's presence in these movies over the last three that she's been in now,
Yeah.
and I felt it. I mean, it was done very well with like the score. I thought was very beautiful at that moment. It was a very drawn out sort of tension that you have with Ethan Hunt being caught in that between those two gates and having to defeat the people and then sprinting, doing his classic Ethan Hunt sprint through the
Yep.
streets of
Yep.
Venice, and he shows up too late. And
Yeah.
Gabriel kills Ilsa, which is maybe like the one moment that I would say is like, okay, Gabriel means business. We know Ilsa
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
take
Of
care of
course.
herself. But he stabs her with his classic knives. Gabriel's known for his knives,
Lots of knives.
apparently.
Yeah. Lots of knives in this movie, just in general.
Lots of knives. But yeah, I mean, that was the it got to me emotionally. Frankly,
Yeah.
I was like, oh fuck, fucking god damn it, they killed Ilsa. That fuck.
Yeah.
I loved her.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really one of the first moments in the last few movies where they attempt something like that.
Yeah.
And I really did appreciate that they added that sort of dramatic stakes, and it'll be interesting to see um how Ethan Hunt reflects on that over the course of this next movie that's coming up, because there wasn't too much time for him to reflect on it here, because we
Yeah.
went from that and immediately into
Well,
gigantic
Tucker, he's
complex
he,
action
he's
sequence.
out on a balcony being moody for a little bit.
Oh, for like 5 seconds, if
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But
Um,
and go ahead.
well, I think that it is well done in the scope of the movie and in
Hmm.
terms of taking away a character that I cared about and me wanting to see how this impacts Ethan Hunt. But I think that in terms of both the setup and payoff of it I don't think it had a ton of it has like contextual weight, but I think filmically it's missing a little bit of weight. Rebecca Ferguson is actually not in much of this movie, period. She's
Hmm.
in the one action sequence in the beginning, but she's not even she's only in like half of it, because also Ethan Hunt is running around and they're very separated for a lot of that.
Hmm.
And then she's gone, and then she's talking to them for a little bit. And then she's in the background of a party sequence, and then she dies. And I think that if Ilsa had been a bigger part of the movie leading up to that, it would have been felt like she's really ripped out of the team. But
Yeah.
otherwise, she hadn't been a part of the team leading up to that. She wasn't really working with them. Of course, she was in the other movies, but not in this one. And so I think
Yeah.
from that setup point, it didn't feel like, oh, we were really missing something when she was taken away. And also because Ethan didn't have a ton of time to reflect on what this meant to him, other than cutting a parallel flashback of his previous wife before IMF dying, and also Ilsa dying. Like they did a boom, boom, connect these two in your mind. They
Hmm.
impact him similarly. That is about as much as we really get. for that last third of the film. And I think that it doesn't have enough surrounding context to be like, yeah, this was like the core of the movie, even though I think it should have been.
Yeah, I think that you still get the impact when he is talking to Grace.
Yeah,
When he is
sure,
like,
sure.
you get that switch up of where he's not saying that I can protect you. You get that was something that he's said in previous films and previously
Mm,
in this movie. But in that final conversation before they go on the train, he's like, I can't guarantee you that I
yeah,
can protect you. I can guarantee you that I'll put my life before yours, but I can't guarantee your safety. I think that's a change. I think you do, for as much as this film has time for Ethan to reflect on that, I think you do. I think it does a good job. We've hardly talked about Tom Cruise
yeah.
as a centerpiece of this thing, but do we really need to? Because
No,
obviously he smashes this thing out of the park
yeah, he's
as he
great.
always does. He gives 110%, 120% rather. But yeah, he's fantastic, and that moment in particular, I thought was well done and was reflected upon enough for my liking,
Sure.
frankly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was something else that crossed my mind, but I don't really remember. Oh,
Kittredge?
hey, no, maybe. Oh, Kittredge, I love. Not nearly as like chewing his lines as he was in 1996, but still good. Carrie Galloway's also good.
Oh yeah.
But I was gonna say Rebecca Ferguson maybe had scheduling conflicts with filming Dune Part Two. Maybe that's why she's not in a whole lot of
Oh,
this.
sure.
Maybe
That's
I don't
certainly
know. I
possible.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, I don't know if that's like, we could obviously say like, oh, remember this moment from the train thing or whatever, but just go see the movie. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go see it again. So why don't you do the
Twice
same?
even.
Yes.
Yeah, I like this movie at the end of
Yeah,
the
me
day.
too.
I think it gets me excited to see where they're going to emotionally end this. With the closing of apparently the Ethan Hunt saga.
Maybe, maybe.
We'll see. But it's kind of being led up to
Hmm.
as that. I mean, lots of series like to end their big moments with a part one and a part two. We're getting that with Spider-Verse. We got it with Hunger Games
Yep.
and Infinity War and Endgame
We're getting
and
with Dune, maybe, or they're making a
maybe
third Dune movie.
we'll see.
We'll see.
But yeah, no, I like this movie at the end of the day. I think that as I reflect on its writing issues,
Hmm.
I think it's some pretty stark stuff.
Yep.
I think there are a lot of underwritten and unnecessary side characters that complicate it. I think it's a little bit long, but at the end of the day, I love Benji, I love Luther, I love Ilsa, I love Ethan, and I like Grace now. And they're doing some crazy shit, and they're
Yeah.
making masks,
And they're just there's no other action, there's no other franchise doing the real shit like Mission
yeah,
Impossible is doing. There's no other
exactly.
action franchise where we're sending our main actor off a cliff on a motorcycle.
No,
Okay, there's just no one else doing that,
and
and you gotta pay the tax. You
there's
gotta pay
no
the
other
dues.
movie franchise that has the balls to show two behind the scenes clips before the fucking movie. It's like, here's
Yeah.
a special look at Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. We're about to see the movie. What are you talking about, special look?
Hey, that's confidence. That's confidence in concept and confidence in execution, baby.
Yeah.
And it's that confidence it's the reason why I'm giving this movie an 8.7 out of 10.
I'm gonna go lower. I'm gonna go 7.9 out of 10.
Okay. Okay.
Uh I'll rewatch it before part two, see if my opinions increase. But
Yeah.
we will be there to review that movie whenever it ends up coming out. Maybe next year, maybe not. But we will see you guys then and for other movies in the meantime.
Remember when Warlock from Top Gun Maverick was in this movie?
Yeah, yeah. Remember when just a bunch of people were in that room and then they didn't
They got
die.
they got knockout gassed.
They got green gas.
They got Joker gassed.
They I love how they have magic green gas that impacts people who are in there as soon as it explodes, but then like 10 seconds later you're fine if you like that.
You can huff that stuff. It's all good.
People are just walking in the room, it's like still really hazy, and they're like, I love the smell of green gas in the
Ah.
morning.
Mm-hmm.